Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we've been able to hear incredibly concerning news from the Korean Peninsula, as we've been able to hear that according to South Korean intelligence, North Korean coastal artillery batteries near to the area of the Yeonpyeong-Myeon Island are preparing to fire their guns towards the island at this very moment, with South Korean forces being put on high alert and Chinese fishing trawlers near to the area immediately leaving the scene as fast as physically possible. At the exact same time, the North Korean government has declared in their constitution that South Korea is now considered a hostile nation, possibly an action preluding to war. We will be keeping a very close eye on this and also explaining the near blows situation that we're seeing at the moment on the peninsula, as it does appear that both sides are on the very cusp of war, unless if diplomatic talks are to begin here very soon. Meanwhile, outside the Korean peninsula and on in the area of the Middle East, we have been able to hear that Hamas's top guy, the guy, trust me guy, he's that guy, Sinwar, has been killed today inside of a major Israeli airstrike, wiping out not only the leader, but also severely decapitating any Hezbollah command abilities that have been ongoing. We've also been able to hear a statement from Benjamin Netanyahu about the situation as well, along with a large deal of praise from multiple different officials in the U.S. government, including the President of the United States. At the exact same time in Ukraine, we have also been able to hear that some pretty interesting situations have unfolded, with the Russians ending up conducting large bombings on Sverdlovka, which is currently inside of occupied Ukrainian territory in the Kursk Oblast, wounding and possibly killing a large number of Russian civilians, and at the exact same time, air raid alerts have been sounded near to the area of the Kerch Bridge, with a smoke screen being deployed. That story is very unclear at the moment, but nevertheless a very interesting one for sure, as it possibly infers that a Ukrainian attack against the bridge may be ongoing at this very moment. But we have loads and loads of breaking news to cover today, and moving into our first bit of breaking news within the Korean Peninsula, we have been able to hear that things are going down incredibly dangerously near the maritime demarcation line, the part of the demilitarized zone, also called the DMZ, that expands off land and on into the waters to the west of the Korean Peninsula. This line that y'all see here on the map is actually the one that is the maritime demarcation line, and divides the waters of North and South Korea quite distinctly. One of the most important islands within this area that is currently controlled by the Republic of Korea, also called South Korea, is the area of the Yeonpyeong-Myeon Island, which you can see right here. And I'm not mispronouncing that. It is actually called the Yeonpyeong-Myeon Island. As best as I can pronounce it, I'm probably butchering that a little bit. Nevertheless, this island has been a major point of contention in between North and South Korea, as we have seen it in the past. The North Koreans continue to exert an illegal claim not recognized by the United States, South Korea, China, or for that matter, the United Nations at large, onto this island. And we've also seen it in the past. North Korea has fired shots towards the island, with the shots landing directly along the maritime demarcation line. At the moment, the island has been evacuated for nearly 6 to 8 months of all locals, and we've also been able to see that a decent contingent of South Korean defense forces have been put onto the island to dissuade or deter any further North Korean actions. However, coastal artillery batteries not that far away from the area of the island, somewhere around this area right here, have been noticed today by South Korean forces to be preparing actions to fire. These are somewhat fairly obvious, as we are probably seeing, or the South Koreans are seeing at this moment, that North Korean coastal artillery batteries are preparing their guns and also getting the ammunition at the ready to be able to start a bombardment of Yeonpyeong-Myeon Island. We are also seeing that the South Koreans have put this island on high alert at this moment, as we were able to hear that just a little while ago as a statement from the South Koreans. We are also able to hear that apparently unusual movements have been detected near the positions as well, possibly showing that there's further ammunition resupplies occurring, maybe suggesting that this would be a prolonged bombardment of the Yeonpyeong-Myeon Island area. At the exact same time, we've also been able to get that additional corroboration that there are some very unusual activities occurring around the shore batteries, and we can see one of the shore batteries at Kaimori and one at Mudo, a little island directly off of the coast near to the area of Kaimori on the actual mainland. The Kaimori coastal artillery battery is somewhere around this area, and while we cannot see the actual coastal artillery pieces themselves, we can see earthworks that have been prepared in the past for coastal artillery to be able to operate out of. While at the exact same time on Mudo Island, we can actually see a North Korean barracks and base that has been set up on this island, and also pre-prepared firing pits for the coastal artillery to operate out of. of, along with beach defense networks and trenches that have also been set up on this island as well, and most likely have existed since the mid to late 1970s. This is something that is a major ordeal, and we cannot state it enough that the Korean situation has rapidly devolved over just the past few days, and it does appear that at this moment, the North Koreans may be prepared to start conducting offensive action near to the maritime demarcation line that would be somewhat serious. Of course, this could all be overblown, and it could be the fact that this is just the North Koreans trying to scare the South Koreans a little bit into thinking that something's going to happen. However, there's a lot diplomatically at play here, and there is a very important thing to note that North Korea and China do have somewhat cordial relations, and if North Korea is to ever conduct any hostile actions or plan hostile actions towards the South Koreans, they will most likely be relaying this to the Chinese government before these offensive actions happen, and we most likely would see China take mitigating measures to reduce any kind of possible inadvertent casualties that would be inflicted onto the Chinese people. And we are able to see that those actions have been taken today as well, as a very interesting announcement has come out that all Chinese fishing trawlers and vessels within the area are currently fleeing the scene at the fastest available speed, according to the information that we have. And this is the exact statement that we were able to get as well. Due to unusual military movements from the North Koreans, South Korean forces on Yeonpyeong Island have been placed on alert. There has also been a sudden withdrawal of Chinese fishing boats from the waters near the island. The fact that all Chinese fishing boats, and only Chinese fishing boats, are leaving the area at the fastest available speed is giving us an idea that the North Korean government has issued some sort of a early notice to the Chinese government that offensive actions will be beginning soon, and have declared that they should move all of their fishing vessels out of the area to avoid any sort of an international or diplomatic incident due to the hostile actions soon to follow. This is giving us a really good idea that things are actually looking very concerning in this area and may actually be leading to a hostile confrontation or an exchange of fire in between the North and South Koreans, because up until this point, it was, of course, just high tensions and military activities revolving around that as usual until the Chinese fishing vessels began to leave. And this is giving us an idea that the Chinese government probably did get a really early notice, maybe an hour or two before the firing is supposed to begin, from the North Koreans. At the exact same time, another thing that's really leading us to believe that this is a lot more ramped up than the normal escalations have been is that today, officially, the North Korean constitution was changed. Changes to the North Korean constitution happen here and there, and usually are a lot easier than constitutional conventions held in any other country around the world, as Kim Jong-un is the supreme leader of North Korea, according to the ideology of Juche, which is something of an economic principle, but largely under Kim Il-sung, well, actually Kim Jong-il, the predecessor to Kim Il-sung. It largely started to turn into a cult of personality to ensure the survival of the Korean nation, well, the North Korean nation, and also the survival of the Kim dynasty. And for this reason, Juche largely dictates that the Kims are the absolute leaders of North Korea and are able to really do whatever they need to, including changing the constitution of the entire nation and also the founding charter of the Communist Party of Korea on a whim. And we were able to hear that that constitution was changed today, as we were getting news that apparently Kim Jong-un has amended North Korea's constitution unilaterally to officially define South Korea as a hostile nation. This is a very interesting kind of a change to make, as we've usually seen that in the past historically, North and South Korea have included wordage within their constitution to state that they are the actual ruler of the entire Korean peninsula, all the way from the Yalu River and all the way down to the port of Busan and the island of Jeju-do, just off of the Korean coast. The fact that the North Koreans have been changing this wordage a little by little, and especially today, by officially declaring South Korea as a hostile nation, is showing that reunification efforts through peaceful means are being completely abandoned on top of the diplomatic escalations that are currently occurring. And it does seem as though North Korea is probably on the very brink of giving the actual orders for artillery fire to commence against South Korea and for a possible armed conflict, a full-scale armed conflict, to begin on the peninsula. At the exact same time, outside of North Korea, we've been able to get incredibly large news from the state of Israel today, as a massive airstrike was conducted that ended up knocking out one of Iranian Proxy's most important leaders within the area. And we were able to hear that none other than Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, was killed today. According to an Israeli statement that was just put out a little while ago, the teeth of the man that was killed in the IDF airstrike in the city of Rafah are an identical match to Yahwa Sinwar's dental record from his time in Israeli prison. The man that we're talking about here, Yahwa Sinwar, is actually the leader of Hamas, very similar in a sense to Nasrallah, who was largely the leader of Hezbollah. Sinwar is pretty much the same guy, but for Hamas. And not only that, he is the mastermind and grand architect behind the October 7th massacre that occurred last year in 2023, which killed nearly 1,700 to 1,800 Israeli citizens within a single 24-hour period. This guy's death has been celebrated not only by the Israelis, but also by the U.S. government, with official congratulations coming from the President of the United States and many other officials of the U.S. federal government. We've also been able to see that Israeli officials and ground forces immediately began touring the site post-airstrike, and we also were able to see clear pictures showing that Sinwar is in fact dead. We were able to see his remains inside of the airstrike, and we can see the Israeli commanders going to the site and touring it just a little while after the airstrike was conducted. Make no mistake that Yahwa Sinwar was an incredibly despicable and irredeemable person, openly advocating for genocide against the Israeli Jewish people, and largely Israeli people in particular, regardless of a religious affiliation. We have been able to see that this has been a massive shakeup of Hamas, and we've also heard that Israel has immediately announced that they will possibly consider a pardon for all surviving Hamas leaders if that means that they will be able to get the remaining hostages that are alive outside of the Gaza Strip. We do not really know how the hostage negotiations are going to evolve now that Yahwa Sinwar is dead. We may see that the Hamas officials attempt to take out the rest of the hostages that they're holding, or they may decide in a attempt to save their own lives that they will give up all of the remaining hostages that they're holding in hopes that their lives will be spared by the Israelis later. But nevertheless, something else very interesting has come out to show that the axis of evil around the world truly is a united force under one banner, as we were able to hear that a Israeli search today found a massive Russian weapons cache found inside of the area, according to the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. This is something that isn't really that shocking, as we do know that there's a heavy Russian involvement in the area in support of the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria, in support of the Iranians and their Iranian proxies in the area as well, as it was actually brought up a while ago that a Panzer S-1 may be given to Hezbollah to help them to fight against Israel directly from the Russian government, and now we are starting to hear that large amounts of Russian weapons are also being found in the hands of Hezbollah, largely showing who the bad guys are, at least in this story in the Middle East. They are clearly an anti-Western force supported by larger anti-Western countries like the Russian Federation, and therefore the support of their destruction and their subsequent destruction by Israeli and coalition forces in the area is an incredibly beneficial thing, and once again in support of Western and American interests as a whole. We were also able to hear that by the time we were trying to film this, the statement was made, but we were able to hear that the statement was going to be made by Netanyahu soon on this matter, and the statement largely summarized that Sinwar had been killed in the airstrike, and this is a massive and a successful day, really, for the state of Israel, as they were able to kill one of the leaders of the most despotic terrorist regimes that has been run in the entirety of the Middle East so far, for a lack of a better word. But moving on out of the Middle East and on up into Ukraine, we were also able to hear some fairly interesting news up here near the Kerch Bridge, as we were able to hear that a smokescreen was deployed over the bridge outside of a drill, with explosions reported in Dzhankoy just nearby, a local Telegram channel said, and an air alert had been declared over the entirety of the port of Sevastopol as well. The bridge was immediately shrouded in smoke with the reports of these explosions in Dzhankoy, near to the northern area of the Crimean Peninsula, along with the air raid alerts that had sounded in Sevastopol. It appears that Russian authorities were wildly concerned that the bridge may be the next target and have already deployed a smokescreen. We are not entirely sure if the bridge has been hit yet or not. Usually news like that will take about another hour or two to come out. We are supposing the bridge probably has not been hit, but once again, it is showing that the Russians consider this to be a high priority strategic target that cannot risk being lost, and so they went through all of the measures of even deploying smoke screens and literally pulling out the smoke and mirror show to try and make sure that a Ukrainian attack would not as easily hit the bridge as they have in the past. But moving on out of the area of the Kerch Bridge and on up into the Kursk Oblast, we've also been able to see something very unfortunate in this area as well. Just north of the town of Sudza, and a little bit closer to the front line these days than before, is the town of Sverdlovko, or Sverdlikova, which is an incredibly difficult name for me to pronounce. Many of y'all may remember this town because it was actually in this area at the beginning of the Kursk offensive that around 150 border guards were captured by Ukrainian forces as they had been rapidly overrun and were sitting in a small little outpost just south of the town of Sverdlikovo, right over here at the T section of this field. Right there. 150 border guards were captured in this area, and since then, the town has largely been uneventful, completely removed from frontline fighting for the large part, and also occupied and administered by Ukrainian occupational authorities at the time. However, the Russians do not care about that, and all they see is that this is Ukrainian-controlled land, and have immediately treated any of the Russian citizens that are still living inside of Ukrainian-occupied territory to be pretty much the same as the Ukrainians, and have decided to start indiscriminately bombing those Russian citizens living within the town of Sverdlikovo to this day. And we were able to see a decent amount of footage showing the absolute devastation and destruction that has been brought onto the town by the Russians' bombardments. It's a very unfortunate scene, and once again showing us that the Russian Federation does not discriminate in between the Ukrainian citizens or the Russians. Largely, their destructive tendencies really are relegated to anyone that they deem to be an enemy, even if they are not actively working with the enemy forces and just deciding to live within the territory in relative peace because they really have no other choice. They will still bomb those people nevertheless. An incredibly unfortunate thing, and once again showing the barbarity and the incivility of the Russian armed forces in persecuting their objectives so far in the war. But nevertheless, that is all of the major breaking news that we have today, except for one little extra tidbit that we have to throw in. And that one actually comes from London. And this was a very interesting statement from a former commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Valery Zaluzhny. Many people may remember Valery Zaluzhny as the hero of Ukraine back in the day. He was the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the man responsible for the defense of Kyiv, the man who was also responsible for the wildly successful Balaklia counteroffensive in the summer of 2022, and also the Kherson counteroffensive in the winter of 2022 that saw the major city, the jewel of the Dnipro as it's been called, Kherson, recaptured by Ukrainian forces. After a while, we did see that Zaluzhny and the central Ukrainian government appeared to not be seeing eye to eye on the current situation in the war, and Valery Zaluzhny was eventually removed in favor of the promotion of Alexander Syrsky to the position of the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Since then, we do know that Valery Zaluzhny has remained the ambassador of Ukraine to the United Kingdom, and we were able to hear a very interesting statement that came out today from Valery Zaluzhny saying that the war could last a lot longer, and he had a specific reasoning behind this. To give you all a little bit of what he said, here's a direct quote from what Zaluzhny said today. "It is almost impossible for Ukraine to get out of the protracted war at this moment." And that is directly according to Valery Zaluzhny. He characterized this stage as static and exhausting battles, which we have also been able to categorize on this channel, that give Russia time to restore its military potential. Although, at least in a few years window, that won't be possible, but over the course of about 8 to 9 years, that may be possible. The Ukrainian ambassador to the United Kingdom and former commander-in-chief said the reason for the situation was that in 2023, Ukraine did not receive enough weapons from the West, and this affected the results of the counteroffensive in the Zaporizhzhia region. A very interesting statement to make, as it does seem that this may be a push along the lines of Zelensky's victory plan, that just simply an overwhelming amount of weapons will eventually end up winning the war somehow, and it's a very interesting kind of a statement. I actually want to I want y'all to tell me in the comments below, what do y'all think of that statement? Do y'all think that that's largely true, that due to a massive failing from the West, the war will keep on going a lot longer, or do y'all think that this is generally Zaluzhny trying to divert blame for the summer offensive that generally was not conducted along U.S. doctrinal planning? We do know that at the time, to give a little bit of a counter-argument to Zaluzhny's statement, that the United States and the Western world had supplied a considerable amount of arms, and it integrated a large amount of these arms into the Ukrainian armed forces, particularly in units like the 47th Magura, which was a brigade raised and constructed entirely off of Western weaponry that had been provided and Ukrainian forces had been trained to use. Along with that Western weaponry, the United States also gave the Ukrainians a step-by-step battle plan to follow in this area about how a Western force would specifically break through a one specific pinpoint area on the front line and then exploit that breakthrough, advancing as rapidly as possible and also hopefully encircling a large amount of enemy forces in the process. The Ukrainians attempted to conduct that battle plan for exactly around 48 to 72 hours and immediately abandoned the battle plan and decided to go with the Soviet-style combined arms doctrine that pretty much dictates a front-wide slog. And then we saw that the offensive fell apart beyond that point. We also saw that really no offensive progress was made beyond that point. So there is a decent argument that while the West did support and supply the Ukrainians incredibly well during that time frame, the Ukrainians' ineptitude to follow out Western battle doctrines conducive to the equipment they were given may have also been the reason for the failing of that offensive. There's pretty decent arguments on either side to be made there, but nevertheless, I would like to hear what y'all think about that in the comments section below. But that is all of the breaking news that we have today, and I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all so much once again for watching this news. We are entirely honored and incredibly thankful that so many of y'all continue to choose this channel to be your primary source of news, not only on what's going on in Ukraine, but also what's going on around the world in places like the Middle East and East Asia. If y'all did enjoy, please do consider subscribing. It literally does nothing for the channel. Like, we actually found that out. I did some digging and found out that the YouTube algorithms literally do not care how much subscribers you have anymore. It only matters if your videos are doing good, and they'll just promote them regardless of how many subscribers you have. But it makes us really happy behind the scenes when y'all do subscribe, because it lets us know that all of y'all are really enjoying the content that we're putting out, and it gives us the kind of inspiration and encouragement to keep going 100%, 110% honestly at this every single day, and putting out as much news as well researched and as quickly as we possibly can. It does a lot for us behind the scenes. We thank every single one of y'all that will be subscribing after watching the video. Also, if you have enjoyed, please hit the like button on this thing. Please make sure to comment in the comments section below and let us know that y'all enjoyed the video. And also, on top of that, one more thing. If y'all have made it to this point in the video and you want to let me know that you have made it here, please make sure to put Grishak in the comments section below. That is Grishak. Grishak. If you have made it to this point in the video, put that down in the comment section below so that way I know you made it to the end of the video, because I'll be going through and hearting every single one of those comments when I see them. But a huge thanks to all of y'all once again for watching. And by the way, one more thing, not too long on this, but if you did enjoy and you want to support these video projects, you can go to the link in the description below and support us on Patreon. That helps us out massively in making these kinds of video projects possible and helps us to be able to do this as our full-time job. But still, a huge thanks to all of y'all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.